What is Tonesight? It's a simple question, but the answer is something really quite complex. Tonesight's more than a machine, it's a creative process. We combine music, interpretation and visual art and transform it into a unique experience that I believe has never been done before. The theory is a simple one. A musician or a group of musicians analyse a work of art and they produce a series of short musical loops or ideas in response to that, and it's specific to individual elements of that painting or sculpture. We then use our software to assign these musical loops to the corresponding areas of the artwork using a digital model. All this information can be loaded onto a device in the gallery, and that device, the Tonesight machine, it can track a user's hand movements whilst playing the relevant sounds, allowing the user to explore the painting in a 3D auditory environment. So we're essentially turning images into sound. But more than that, the user has the power to become the artist themselves. So they're playing the paintings with their hands and creating a unique sequence or arrangement of the music through the use of various gestures. So these can range from the slightest flick to vast sweeping motions as if they have a large orchestra or a band at their disposal. And in fact, they do, because these sounds, these rhythms, these melodies have been recorded on tubas, violins, on drums, or vocal loops. And the sheer number of musical loops means that no one composition will ever be the same. Tonesight's come a long way since its conception around 3 years ago, and to better understand it, we need to go right back to the start. So the idea for Tonesight first came about in 2015 when I was performing, and I needed a way of remotely controlling my loop station, which lets me record different tracks live and play them back while I'm singing or playing another instrument. However, using a loop station, either on a stand in front of me or on the floor as a pedal, meant that I didn't have the freedom that I wanted when I was performing on stage. So myself and my fellow band member Nicholas came up with the idea of placing a switch in my shoe which would allow me to start and stop the musical loops with my feet from anywhere on stage. This was literally a step in the right direction, but I knew there had to be a better way. Fast forward a few months, we're using a Kinect motion sensor to actually create an image on screen, and we found that actually the Kinect could send MIDI signals to any piece of musical equipment. So I showed this technology to Cal Hewitt, who was a student of mine at Simon Langton Grammar School for Boys, and I said to him, perhaps there's a way in which we could use this gesture recognition technology to create freedom on stage, freedom for any performer to create sound. And with Cal going away and programming and trying various software ideas, we actually came up with a system whereby you could play loops with your hands, not through a loop station, but actually by activating loops in a piece of software. And it so happens that at the time I was employed as the lead musician on a project that brought together 12 young blind and visually impaired youngsters from around East Kent. This was Sensing Culture, and it was run at the Beanie Museum, and my task was to present a piece of music and to allow the young people to interact with the gallery. And I went back to Cal and I said, look at this opportunity. If we could somehow present the music of these young people in some way that's interactive, that people can walk in and move to and interact with, then we could be onto something quite exciting. So with this ambition in mind, we set to work on a prototype. And it was during a week-long workshop at Simon Langton Grammar School in 2017 that Cal and various other students from the school implemented this technology into a portable system.
We've developed a new kind of a machine that's on a portable trolley, and it works so that you can move it round to different paintings in the gallery and just select different ones on the computer, and whichever one you're next to, you can get a musical interpretation of that painting which has been composed during this week-long workshop by students here at the Langton Boys.
Also during that same week, the students visited the Beanie Museum, where they were introduced to a number of paintings and they chose their favourite ones and responded to them with music. Very quickly the students were producing unique, original, subtle and often very beautiful soundscapes for these paintings. And it was around that time we realised the potential of Tonesight. What if we could use those wonderful varieties and subtleties in sound to actually recreate an artwork through sound?
Then, using the software that I've developed, you can associate those sounds with that region of the painting. You simply drag the sound files across and they show up as dots.
That way, each part of the painting could be represented by a different sound, which, when combined, would allow users to feel their way around a painting solely through hearing. Our plan for the grand finale of that week of work at the school was to demonstrate our system at the Beanie Museum, where the public would have the opportunity to try out the new technology. The highlight of that event was when Ellie May, one of the students on the Sense and Culture project, had the opportunity to use the device in the gallery and appeared captivated by the experience.
When you move your arms or legs, it has sensors in it which sense your movements and play all sorts of different music. So when you point to a certain part of the painting, you can get different sounds come out of it.
I'm very moved by the interaction of the technology with the people and the need of obviously partially sighted. But I'm loving seeing the interaction between the boys from the Simon Langton Boys School and then partially sighted participants, because I've worked with those as well. And then bring in the art component and then the music. Well, it's a beautiful coming together.
This suggested to us that there was something worthwhile and valuable in what we were doing, so the Tonesight project continued to grow. The following year, we had our first chance to install a Tonesight system in an independent gallery at the Lilford Gallery in Canterbury. In the run-up to that launch, Cal worked hard to refine the technology so that the system could now work with two hands, giving you the ability to explore different parts of the painting at once, to zoom in or out and to discover the painting in greater detail. The artist Greg Stobbs brought a huge canvas into the centre of school, and 6th form musicians as well as visiting musicians came and improvised music through the day, creating a live score for the painting. Now operating from the cameras and a computer, we realised that we could take this anywhere. We enlisted the help of Langton Design Department to adapt a trumpet case into a hard case for Tonesight, which had the speakers, the computer and the sensors in the top. And this development allowed us to take projects further afield and bring Tonesight to more people. One of our most rewarding ventures came from a series of visits to Catching Lives, a homeless centre in Canterbury. Here we met Alex, a superbly talented visual artist who was visiting the centre. I took along talented 6th form musicians to play alongside Alex as he was painting, and we also then produced the music and sent it back to him so that he could carry on painting on this huge canvas and produce some wonderful work. It was around this time last year that I was invited to perform a concert of my own songs in Greenwich Painted Hall, which is a huge privilege, and as I was there talking to the people running the hall, I mentioned Tonesight and they came up and said, "We'd love to have this in the hall." So we seized that opportunity straight away and had a meeting with the team at the Painted Hall in Greenwich. And one thing that came up in our discussions was that they would love to work not only with a secondary school like Simon Langton, but also with Trinity Laban. And so I spoke to him about this. He said this would be fantastic to do during CoLab, when the students have time out of their normal studies to take part in a collaborative project. And together we put together the proposal for CoLab, which could bring together Laban dancers, Langton dancers, and also musicians from both groups.
It's very overwhelming. I would say that it's particularly overwhelming because when you walk in, it's all around you. So you walk in and you've got this incredible sort of Sistine Chapel-esque experience. It doesn't really feel very English. It doesn't feel like something that should exist in Greenwich, in London.
I think we all kind of took a minute just to take in the space and think about ways in which we could use it.
I think because there's so much detail and there were quite a number of us in the space, and so there's so many different ideas kind of bubbling around.
We started this process with a huge and diverse age group, which was really interesting. So when we looked at the paintings originally, we had everything from an 11-year-old to like a 30-year-old's perspective. So one of the first things we looked at in the painting was how a kid or an adult could think about form, shape, color, and a bunch of the features of the painting, and that later became some of the dance attributes that we led.
In terms of responding to the walls and to the paintings, I think initially we just went off the fact that it's this very ethereal portrayal of the time period. Woven amongst that you have more Jacobean imagery. So I think we were responding to the more Hellenic side of it.
The project really felt to me as a conversation between dancers and musicians, as we were constantly sharing ideas about where we wanted to go and what we wanted the project to be in the end.
we were having a dialogue about how dance can often be kind of just put to music, and how the music sets the pace, sets the style, sets the quality. But we really wanted with this project it to be a conversation between the musicians and the dancers, so working really collaboratively, and I think that's been really successful.
You could really tell that after the week of improvising together and we became much more used to each other and working together, that you got a sense that the musicians were responding to us. So if, for instance, we were doing a floor section, which is much more grounded and more dynamic in a more lyrical sense, you could tell the musicians were responding to that with maybe deeper or slower or more legato music.
We've all been drawing inspiration from the same thing, so there's also been a kind of third element as well. So the artwork is kind of a collaborator as well, so I think that's brought us together.
So I'm really thrilled that the students were able to take some of the drama, energy and beauty of the painting in the painted hall and turn them into that piece of performance at the end of March. And now the job is to take that again and try and recreate it through Tonesight, recreate this experience for people so they can move and enjoy and explore the hall through this wonderful medium of music that the students have created and recorded for us. And then I want to see if we can take this further. We've already started a project with the Wallace Collection in central London, and I can't wait to see the ways in which people use Tonesight to share and to amplify their experiences of the world.